Did you know that 83 out of the 750 players on the 2015 baseball opening day were Dominican? Now, that's roughly 11% of the major league players right there. And here's another fact that will interest you even more. There's always one big leaguer for every 63,000 people you will find in the Dominican Republic. When you compare this to the United States, where it's one big leaguer for every 307,000 people, you'll discover that the Dominican Republic is like a factory that churns out major league talent at a rate 5 times faster than the US. That's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? But that's not all. When you take a peek into the minor leagues, the numbers get even wilder. Here, about 44% of players in the first 2 levels of the White Sox minor league system are Dominican-born. And if you toss in players from other neighboring countries like Venezuela, Mexico, and Puerto Rico, that number jumps to over 60%. At this rate, it's just like the Dominican Republic and its neighbors have an agreement to totally take over the game of baseball, and they're gradually doing so. But then, how is this even possible? How did we manage to have so many Dominican players in Major League Baseball? And what's the ultimate secret behind the Dominican Republic's dominance in this sport? Well, hold on tight. We're about to go on an interesting ride that will uncover the true reason why the Dominican Republic is an incubator for baseball talent. And yes, we will also consider how this Dominican dominance has impacted the beautiful game we all love. So make sure to watch till the end. Of course, before we kick off, we need to consider the history of baseball itself. Many of us think the United States is the home of this beautiful game, right? Well, you might just be in for a shocker. Let's face it, the United States is often seen as baseball's epicenter. But if you rewind the clock, you'll discover that the sport did not spread to the Dominican Republic from the United States. Instead, it was the Cubans who first imported this American pastime during the 19th century. Yep, you heard that right. The Cubans did. They were the torchbearers and forerunners who would later pass their love for the game to their Dominican neighbors. As time passed, baseball became more than just a sport. It became a way of life for these two countries. So, while the United States would later turn baseball into a multi-million-dollar industry, it was the Cubans and, well, the Dominican Republic who had earlier embraced it as part of their identity. In their quest to grow the sport, Americans initially turned to Cuba in search for baseball talent. Well, political tensions would soon shadow the Cuban-American relationship, and this became a problem for the growing baseball industry in America. It was at this point that attention was turned to the Dominican Republic, and the country became Major League Baseball's talent goldmine. Of course, the Dominicans didn't disappoint. Their talent was undeniable, and they proved it on the baseball diamond time and time again. In response to this, MLB made a strategic move, setting up academies in the Dominican Republic. These academies became the breeding grounds for the next generation of baseball legends affiliated with MLB teams in the United States. Fast forward to today, and Dominicans are the kings of Major League Baseball. They're not just players, they're the game's heartbeat, making up more than 10% of all players in the league. Plus, when you look at the numbers, it's clear that Dominican Republic punches way above its weight in baseball. With a population of roughly 10.5 million people, this country's like a David standing next to a Goliath that is the United States, which is home to a staggering 319 million people. So what's the secret here? For starters, it's not just about fancy equipment or high-priced coaching. Nope, Dominican players essentially get by with only the basics. They don't have parents shelling out thousands of dollars for lessons or travel ball teams. So how do they get by, you'd ask? Well, it's mostly a straightforward model involving 2 simple steps. Number 1, they just have to play. A question that might be coming to your mind at this point is probably something like, aside from the hunger for success, what sets the Dominican baseball system apart? Well, let's just say their lives depend more on leaving their current state, and baseball provides an escape route. Plus, since they have little to no one paying for their baseball journeys, wouldn't it be best to put all their hearts firmly into it? You can easily say the game is like a means to an end for these folks. Now, picture yourself, a young hopeful kid gripping that baseball with every ounce of strength, just like your hero Pedro Martinez, swinging for the fences, just like the master slugger Robinson Cano. You already know that the game could change your life if you put your all into it and do it right. Indeed, everyone has that competitive fire burning deep within them in the Dominican baseball arena. It's just something we cannot deny. The Dominican Republic also has a rich tradition of ball players, with baseball fields scattered like gems across the landscape, and instructors who eat, sleep, and breathe the game. Baseball isn't just a sport there, it's a way of life. It's their national game, and they've mastered it. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. If you take all this baseball history and love in a place and add it to some severe economic challenges, what you will get is talented players who are passionate and ready to give it their all. That's exactly the story of the Dominican Republic. Kids in this region see baseball as more than just a game. It's hope. It's a lifeline. They see people around them, folks they know, who've hit it big in baseball. These people have made it off the island and found financial success because of this game. So it's not just about playing ball. It's about changing their lives and their families' lives as well. In simple terms, you get the Dominican Republic's baseball phenomenon when you mix talent, tradition, and the hunger for a better life. You want to fire that ball at 92 miles per hour or send it soaring 400 feet into the heavens? Well, kid, you better do it before you hit 18 or you're probably not getting signed. That's the high-stakes game they play on this sun-kissed island. Now, let's switch gears for a moment. Over in the United States, there's this expectation that young Dominicans might be a tad unpolished when they enter the rookie league. You see these raw talents throwing heat and swinging free, all products of this culture we're discussing. Some might critique it, but let's not forget one crucial thing. It's what has got them here. Today, it's rare to spot a Dominican in the pro leagues who didn't ink a deal for at least 50 to 100 grand. That's life-changing money, folks. It means that they've already triumphed in so many ways just by being there. Sadly, though, not every Dominican player gets that golden ticket, and instead of splurging on themselves, some of them would send their meal money back home to feed their families. That's the kind of heart these players carry on that diamond. Number 2. Investments. You can already guess that in terms of economy, the Dominican Republic doesn't exactly top the charts. It's not anything like Wall Street. So you might still wonder, how are they churning out so much talent? After all, only hard work can not always do the trick. Well, apart from the fact that they want to play, there's another mechanism that has helped so far, and here's where the magic happens. Every MLB club is more than willing to drop some serious cash into training facilities in the Dominican Republic. It's like a baseball gold rush. Now, don't get things wrong. Dominicans live, breathe, and dream baseball. It's ingrained in their very souls, and it's a part of their traditions. But you know what's adding a turbo boost to their journey? It's the cash injection from MLB teams into this baseball paradise. This is just like another factor behind these players' triumphs, and the story is quite unique. It all started in the groovy 70s. That's when Epi Guerrero had a vision. By the way, this is a guy who once swung the bat in the minor leagues. He would later think to himself, hey, why not open an academy for these young talents in the Dominican Republic? So he did just that. Imagine this place, not the fancy high-tech academies you might picture today, but a humble spot out in Santo Domingo, which is the capital of the Dominican Republic. It was Spartan-like indeed, but it was where dreams took root and grew. Guerrero joined forces with the Toronto Blue Jays, and together they turned that humble facility into a star-making factory. They molded and shaped talents like George Bell and Tony Fernandez, who would later light up the big leagues. A few years later, the MLB saw an opportunity there and took it. More teams started pouring money into these Dominican academies back in the 1980s, and that put the country on the map. So you've got to hand it to Major League Baseball too. They were definitely playing the long game. And despite the Dominican Republic's economic roller coaster, MLB has opened its wallet and invested considerable amounts in the country's baseball scene. At this point, we must note that all 30 MLB clubs have baseball training academies on Dominican soil. Plus, it's not just about refining those curveballs and home runs. These academies often have an educational twist, as many young players bunk up in dormitories right on the academy grounds. It's like a baseball boot camp with books. Some teams have even gone all out in recent years to splurge serious cash for the upgrading or building of brand new facilities here. Take the Seattle Mariners, for example. They splashed $7 million to create a sprawling 24-acre baseball training academy here in 2013. Surely, that's a lot of zeros, and it's just one example of such occurrences.